Sports presents Benning Bites with Damon Benning. Benning Bites with Damon Benning.
Another episode of Benning Bites. Appreciate you fine folks being a part of what we're doing over here at Hurrdat Sports. I heard that. Really appreciate it. However you get us, make sure you keep doing so. Apple, the YouTube page, Spotify. We're in ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln at 9. Amos AM 590 here at 7. Fantastic show with my main man, Ravi Lula. And listen, we're hot and heavy. Excuse my voice. I know it's grade A trash right now, but I've just been thinking a ton about what to react to, what not to react to. And week ones are tricky, all right? You have this thing in your mind about how it's going to go, and then all off season, and then you see it, and it's like, okay, is that greater than, less than, and then you typically react accordingly. And I think football is no different, right? So we had these preconceived notions of what we thought we were going to get. And I felt like if I just compare and contrast Minnesota to Nebraska and then Colorado to TCU, it's interesting. It's right, 90% of the people that I knew felt like Nebraska wasn't going to beat Minnesota, right? If they did, it was going to be gravy, wasn't expected. And so when Nebraska lost, I was surprised to see all the doom and gloom. Just because if most of the people didn't think we were going to win, would you have rather, if they would have gotten blown out, would you have felt better? And that always kind of struck me as odd, because what you want to do ultimately as a competitor is be in control, as much control as you can of the outcomes. That should leave you more encouraged than discouraged. And so I felt like, if Nebraska controls the controllables, and I get it. It's been hard for them to do, but it's still in a better position than just being out-talented or not being good enough physically, right? If you dominate the controllables, you're always going to have a chance to win. So I didn't understand why we were already canceling the season, even though some of the same ugly mistakes were were coming back to haunt Nebraska with an entirely different staff. I get the frustration. I just didn't get the finality of it not going well, because you always want to be in control, and Nebraska is in a tremendous amount of control of how the outcome of that game went, and that's what you always want. It's better than going into a game and saying, there's nothing we can do. So the reaction to the game kind of left me a little miffed. Did I get it? Yeah, to some degree. But then I got it even less after I watched the reactions to Colorado. Because I get 1-11, they won their opener. You had something in your mind, and it either confirmed or it was something unexpected, right? Because I don't know where you were on Colorado, right? Me personally, did I think they were going to win? No. But they were who I thought they were, right? Really dynamic at quarterback, top player in the country coming out of high school. Hunter was the top recruit in the country. Dylan Edwards, a top recruit. They played. Those guys were electric on offense. And I wasn't one of those guys that was like, going from HBCU to this. You could just tell, if guys can play, guys can play. And I didn't think that the offense was any more complicated than it was at Jackson State. A lot of mesh concepts, a lot of feeble attempts at the run game. Those things carried over, right? 33 carries for 54 yards. So I was probably more surprised at how their offense was defended by TCU and how TCU got away from the run game. That's that's also not controlling the controllables. So what Colorado was doing, in my opinion, as a coach, as I'm watching this, is it was more about what TCU was allowing them to do than what Colorado was actually doing. Yet the level of excitement for Colorado moving forward was at a fever pitch, whether it was national folks, Colorado fans, and I always, you have to be careful, right? Obviously, of how much of that is can we repeat? How much of it? Like, you always have to factor in, are we controlling what we can control when you want to try to predict outcomes going forward? And sometimes that's difficult to do. So as I'm watching, it was interesting, I guess I would say. But I think most of it stems from what was already going on in our heads, not necessarily in conjunction with what we saw, if that makes sense. So if the expectation levels, depending on where the expectation levels, that's usually the range of your emotions. But if you didn't think Nebraska was going to win anyway, which I think 90% of the folks didn't, would you have rather had them get blown out? I wasn't any more discouraged after that game than I was going into that game. And I picked them to win. I thought they would win a three-point game. So, do they have some things to clean up? Absolutely. Does it have to look more like actual real football in terms of the pre-snap stuff and staying on schedule? Absolutely. Will Sims have to make some more throws? Absolutely. But that's football related. It's not about the emotion of the game. And I think if you're a Nebraska fan, that's where you want it. You want to be in a position where it's going to boil down to football. And I get it, right? It's like, but DB, it's looked this way for such and such a time. Listen, Coach Rule told you right away, don't put that on him. That's not his. None of that has anything to do with him. All right? It's all about getting better in the moment. And if you pit it against where Colorado is in kind of the euphoria because it was so unexpected in terms of what they did, that doesn't make it any more repeatable. You know what I'm saying? It was based on the perception going in, not necessarily whether the performance is something that they can sustain. And here's the other thing. I look at, listen to Coach Sanders after the game and talking to the Colorado beat reporters. And, Travis Hunter won't see the practice field again until Wednesday. They backed him down 3 days before they went to play TCU just because of his workload. And I don't know how sustainable that is either. Nebraska's got to get back to what's their original premise on offense. You want to make cornerbacks tackle and linebackers cover. And if Nebraska sticks to that philosophy on offense, we'll see kind of the wear and tear of how it affects Travis Hunter. You've got to make him participate on defense at a physical level. That means in the perimeter run game, don't block him. Go get the free safety. Crack the next level defender. Make Travis Hunter have to fit in the run game. Make him a actual two-way player there. Little things like that. Shedeur Sanders does not want to run and get out of the pocket. See if you can't flush him a little bit. See if you can't reroute some of these receivers on those mesh concepts that TCU couldn't get hands on guys. It's definitely doable. It's not, if you're just looking at the actual football portion of it, there's plenty of things that Nebraska can do, which ultimately is why I think Coach Rule said we need to make this about football. It's not about any of the other stuff. This boils down to football. And as we get into it over the course of the week, I'll tell you what I think is going to happen and why I think it's going to happen, because that's the key. It's not, I can't just be on a hope and a prayer. It has to be based on something that I think can actually happen during the course of the football game on Saturday. You stick around all week, and I'll tell you what that is. Make sure you tune in to the show coming up here in just a few minutes. It's another episode of Benning Bites.